Welcome back to another episode of the Big D podcast on the Smoky Spectrum Sports Network. My name is Alex, as the featured guest for this week, supporting the Big D himself, the biggest Cats fan with the loudest meow in the state of Florida. Even though he's not in Duval, he is still representing his Jacksonville Jaguars. Mr. Dylan Schmittler, how are you, sir? Welcome to your show.
Thank you. Please, by the way, please subscribe, like, and share the Smoky Spectrum Sports YouTube page. Also, check out the Big D podcast for the audio listeners, Spotify and Apple.
Yeah, so as you can probably guess by the garb that we are donning on this beautiful day, we are here to talk about week one of the NFL season. And not only just week one, we're talking about a very specific matchup following two of our favorite football teams. If you couldn't guess, I'm a diehard Dolphins fan. Dylan is a Jags fan, diehard Jacksonville Jaguars fan as well. And we're here. Dylan is starting this series this year, previewing each Jacksonville Jaguars game with a fan of the opposing team. And lucky for me, he chose me as his Miami Dolphins fan of choice. So I'm excited to get the NFL season kicked off, get this episode kicked off, and talk a little Jags-Dolphins starting here on September 8th, week one of the NFL football season down in beautiful Hard Rock Stadium in Miami, Florida.
Oof. By the way, Alex, thinking, how good's your memory?
It's pretty bad when it comes to certain London trips against a certain head coach, if that's where you're going with it.
Do you remember the last time our teams played together?
I sure do. Woke up nice and early. It was a Sunday morning at about 9 a.m. and got all excited to wake up and watch my Dolphins win a game in London, and instead, thanks to a last-second field goal, we gifted Urban Meyer one of his very few wins as an NFL head coach.
Hey, I mean, Urban Meyer's 1-0 in London, right?
Yeah, he's 1-0 in London. He's 1-0 in Miami, or against Miami. But, I think fortunately for Jaguars fans, fortunately for Dolphins fans, and I think fortunately for Urban Meyer, he is back in the college ranks, and didn't seem that the NFL experiment would panned out too well for him.
Yeah, but what do you remember about that game? Because that was the first time Trevor Lawrence and Tua played each other in the NFL. Of course, both guys played each other in the 2018 College Football Playoff National Championship, where Trevor Lawrence became the first freshman to win a natty in 30 plus years.
Yeah, it was definitely. Obviously, Trevor and Tua have some history. It was a good game from what I remember. I mean, honestly, I brought up the stats. Trevor did not have the greatest game. I mean, 25 of 41, 319 yards, one touchdown, no picks. Against Tua's 33 of 47, 329 yards, two touchdowns, one pick. Malcolm Brown was the Miami Dolphins' leading rusher of that game, with Tua second behind him. Mike Gesicki led the Dolphins in receiving yards, with Jalen Waddle behind him. Mac Hollins bringing up third. Obviously, that was back in the James Robinson era, who was the leading rusher for Jacksonville. And Marvin Jones hit the 100-yard mark with a touchdown, as the leaders on the Jacksonville side of the ball. But I'm not going to lie, I blocked a lot of that game out. The only thing I specifically remember is Matthew Wright hitting 250-plus yarders at the end of that game to secure the W.
Yeah, I remember watching the game, and I barely even knew who Matthew Wright was, and I'm like, no, he can't make this. And all of a sudden, it's like, and then it was, trying to remember, I think like a 53, 54-yarder, and I'm like, he can't make two in a row, right? And I'm like, I could not believe what just happened.
Yeah, I couldn't either. I was in shock. I didn't expect him to make the first one. I definitely didn't expect him to make the second one. I liked our chances in overtime too, but it's everything happens for a reason, I guess, and that just adds that much more fuel to the fire, for this upcoming week 1 matchup.
Yeah, thankfully, both of our teams have changed since then. Coach is gone, whole new set of players coming in. I think our backfields and wide receivers are going to be a little different for this game, right?
Yeah, definitely. As I said, James Robinson, and I don't even remember Malcolm Brown. Jeez, I mean, those we have significantly upgraded our backfields. Obviously, receiver wise as well, Mike Gesicki will no longer be the leading receiver for the Miami Dolphins in this game. Most likely, it'll be a man by the name of Tyreek Hill, if you've heard of him.
Jalen Waddle.
No, or Jalen Waddle, who was playing in that game. Actually, had 2 touchdowns, 70 yards receiving, 10 catches in that game. So definitely look to see a little bit more of this from Mr. Waddle on Sunday.
Obviously, the Dolphins were like one of the best offense to have led the NFL in passing last year. But has Tua? I mean, what's different about Tua than the game 3 years ago?
Oh, I mean, everything, to be honest. It's the great thing about Tua is obviously, the biggest concerns about, originally the big knocks on Tua was his arm strength. I think that argument has been done and settled. He was the most accurate deep ball passer in the NFL last season. He was the passing yards leader in the NFL last season. I think the deep ball narrative, people still want to give Tyreek Hill the credit, but it's more than Tyreek Hill running down the field and Tua blindly chucking it and Tyreek, finding the ball and coming down with it. They have a real connection. I think we saw them a little slow out the gate just because you need time to develop the chemistry between a quarterback and a receiver that fast. And you got to think about timing and anticipation. Quarterbacks have a certain window when it comes to receivers and when to throw the ball, where to put it. And with Tyreek Hill, that speed is such a different animal that a cheetah per se, that it's got to be difficult and it's got to be different, making sure you can lead him and not overthrowing him because it's practically impossible to overthrow him. We saw a lot of underthrown balls to Tyreek Hill, or especially early on in their partnership, just because I think Tua wasn't exactly didn't realize how quick Tyreek could get down the field. The injury concerns are one thing. A lot of people laugh at the jiu-jitsu work that Tua did in the offseason before last year, but he was one of, I think, 5 quarterbacks last season to play every single regular season game.
And let me see if I could get the other 4. Well, Josh Allen was one of them.
I don't even know the exact list, but
it doesn't matter. But the fact that Tua played all 17 games was
exactly. We saw it in practice, not in practice, but I'm saying we saw him doing it and using that jiu-jitsu work to his advantage. I don't know how many times I would see Tua get put on his back because of our offensive line, and you'd see his head slam into the turf. And then if you watch him last season, he's flipping into a roll as he's landing on the ground to make sure he's not getting that impact to his head. He's playing smarter. He's not taking hits. I've seen Tua Tagovailoa juke out linebackers and run over linebackers, specifically in the Cardinals and the Jets games. And I think Mike McDaniel has told him, it's great. We believe that you can do that. I know that can hype up the team, but you got to take care of your body. And I think that's the biggest thing is Tua's really learned at this point of his career where his body needs to be to have peak performance shape. I think at the beginning of his career, he was much lighter. He was a lot more willing to be mobile and to juke and to make a play on the feet. Then he bulked up because he started getting a little banged up. And he lost that mobility. I think he's finally kind of found a middle ground where he can still be agile. He can still make plays happen, especially if the play breaks down, but he's still big enough, smart enough, and composed enough to make sure that, he's not taking unnecessary damage, because at the end of the day, if Tua Tagovailoa goes down, so does the Miami Dolphins season.
How much has Mike McDaniels meant to Tua? Because we've seen even Tua himself called out coach Robert Flores. Maybe it was something with the New England coaches. They're old school. They're more in your face. But maybe Mike McDaniel's looking like a nerd with the glasses and the hoodie.
Yeah, I mean, to answer your question, Mike McDaniel has saved Tua's career. Everyone's seen the Tua Brian Flores comments, I'm sure. Not everyone in your workplace gets along with each other. And unfortunately, their workplace is an NFL locker room. And unfortunately, it's the head coach and the starting quarterback. I don't know the details about why Brian Flores didn't like Tua. And it's always tough for a head coach to get hired into a franchise who already has a quarterback. And it's not a guy that they made this, and it's not their guy. I whatever it was that Brian Flores didn't see in Tua or didn't like about Tua, it's in the past. And, Tua learned from that experience. And I'm almost grateful for it just because I'll tell you what, when Brian Flores left, there was not a man in the NFL I hated more than Brian Flores. And when Mike McDaniel joined, there was not a man in the NFL I loved more than Mike McDaniel, just because the flip in personality and confidence and talent that we've seen out of Tua after the transition with Mike McDaniel as a coach. He is a player's coach. He has gotten to understand Tua emotionally, physically, mentally to a T. And he's the perfect guy for the Miami Dolphins to bring in. He's the perfect head coach. Tua is a very mental person. He wears his heart on his sleeve. He's one of the most genuine guys in the NFL, but there's certain players that you can yell at and scream at, and it'll make them play better. There's certain players you need to coddle, and Tua's somewhere in between. He's got mental toughness, but he's also not going to respond well to being called trash and a waste of a roster spots. Mike McDaniel's done everything for his career, and not only personally with Tua, but just the play calling, the look of this offense. I mean, the skills that Tua brings to the table are his anticipation, his accuracy, and getting the ball out of his hands quick. And that is everything that the Mike McDaniel offense is. I mean, the RPOs, the quick passes, the cheat options, as they call it. I mean, this offense is built around Tua Tagovailoa, and I think we saw last season he's the perfect quarterback for this Mike McDaniel offense. He's got the perfect weapons for this offense. And, I think, the combination between Mike, Tua, Raheem, Devon, Tyreek, Jalen, it's just the perfect combination, for some offensive football.
I think what makes Miami's offense so difficult to stop is that Miami's basically like a track team.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it takes... Sometimes you just throw Tyreek Hill or Jalen Warren a swing pass, and they're 80 yards down the field. And maybe the best play call last year for Miami wasn't a bomb to Tyreek Hill. It might have been that little shovel pass against Denver.
Yep. That's that little flick where it was just he went underneath, right under the D line or the O line in the channel. I was thinking that exact play. And, really the big thing to me, and where I was really going to go with this was, oh my God, I just lost it. But there's one thing when it comes to a creative game plan. There's one thing to where your offense is so intricate, your plays are so schematically strong that it's hard for defenses to figure out. There's another thing. The Miami Dolphins aren't doing anything extremely elegant or sophisticated. The problem with the Miami Dolphins offense is it's simple and it's hard to stop because of the speed, like you said. I mean, you can know what the Miami Dolphins are going to be running at you, but unless you put someone far enough back in the perfect position, you better have a good angle at Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane, or even Raheem Mostert, because they're going to be, unless you take the right angle, you ain't catching them. But enough about Miami. I know we've got two teams in this game, and I'm gonna flip the table on you a little bit, Dylan. I want to know about Trevor Lawrence. I mean, this is a guy that I think one of the most hyped prospects coming into an NFL draft, maybe ever. Trevor Lawrence.
At least since Andrew Luck.
Right. I mean, we've known about Trevor Lawrence since he was in high school. He has been the next big thing for, it almost seems like a decade now, and he's only been in the league for a couple seasons. As far as his NFL career, we've seen some ups, we've seen some downs. Where, as a Jaguars fan, do you see Trevor in his progression and his growth at this point of his career, based on your expectations, from day one?
I would say Trevor has fulfilled some expectations, especially in year two. But I mean, last year I didn't think Trevor was great. I mean, of course he played with 69 injuries, but this is a big year for Trevor.
Yeah,
he's going to have he's married. He got a huge contract in the offseason. Going to become a father. And to be honest, there's pressure because the Jags, well, everybody's picked them in the AFC South last year, and we know how things ended in Nashville. But this Jaguar team feels different. And, in a way, even though the Jags lost Calvin Ridley, I think Trevor is poised to have his best year in the NFL because Christian Kirk, knock on wood if that cap is healthy, is ready to be the number one. Gabriel Davis is a big play waiting to happen. Sure, he might go 1 for 20 or 3 for 220. But the key new addition to the Shaq offense this year is Brian Thomas.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you saw the game on Friday night where he's caught like a 38-yard pass. Brian Thomas offers a big wide receiver with speed. And I'm not saying he'll be Justin Jefferson, but remember the consecutive draft. Remember that great LSU team with Justin Jefferson, with Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. Malik Neighbors went to the New York Giants for the 6th pick, but Brian Thomas was a big play receiver. I think Brian Thomas could be similar. I'm not saying will be Justin Jefferson, but he could end up being the single difference maker in whether Jacksonville is a playoff contender, a division contender, or maybe, I'm not going to jinx it, another trophy contender.
Yeah, I definitely echo your sentiment on Brian Thomas. I mean, he's the guy I've been targeting in fantasy football drafts this year. I know you are, and just added to the extra weapons. I mean, that receiver room did get revamped, obviously, with Calvin Ridley moving on to Tennessee, but you've got Christian Kirk, as you mentioned, Brian Thomas, Gabe Davis, UCF, local legend here in Central Florida. You definitely have the weapons, and one guy we haven't talked about, is Travis Etienne coming back, leading that running back room with Tank Bigsby behind him. But, I think there's a lot of potential when it comes to that receiver room. And I really think that this could be the year where that Jacksonville Jaguars offense starts figuring it out, because the amount of weapons, I think you did a good thing with that receiver room, even though there was some changes. I think they were necessary changes. And I think it's going to help that culture kind of grow together. It's this, like you said, it feels like a new Jaguars team. This kind of feels like the start of an era for the Jaguars. It kind of seems like the last couple of years, they were trying to figure out their identity. They were trying to figure out Trevor Lawrence's place in the NFL. And I think at this point, the Jaguars know who they are. They know what they bring to the table. And there's a high ceiling potential for the Jacksonville Jaguars that, as long as they play up to that potential, I see them winning a lot of football games this year. And, I think, additions like Gabe Thomas, like Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas, as well as the ever-growing evolution of Trevor Lawrence can definitely be something that, you Jaguar fans like yourself should be excited about. But, I know we've kind of talked about the passing game with Trevor and the new receivers, but, I think one guy who, especially in fantasy football circles, maybe a little controversial this year just based on, where he should be falling and, how soon is too soon to pick him, how late is too late to pick him. What do you see out of Travis Etienne this year? I mean, he definitely, is one of the top tier running backs in the fantasy football game. I don't know if I would call him one of the greatest running backs in the NFL. I think fantasy production and NFL production kind of vary a little bit there. But, we've seen Travis Etienne be great. We've seen him, have some not great performances. Where do you see Travis Etienne falling this year when it comes to the Jacksonville Jaguars offense and his productivity?
I don't know, because there's a lot. I don't know. I think Travis Etienne can be a top 10, 12 back, but I mean, if you look at like yards per carry last year, I don't know where Etienne was exactly, but he was not good. Part of it was the offensive line, because every game I saw the Jags play, it seemed like the running back was ending up on his butt. Can I say butt?
Yeah.
But I think with the additions Jags made, getting Mitch Morse from Buffalo, I think Travis Etienne could be a top 10, 12 back.
Yep. And I think that's about the range where I see him as well. Especially when it comes to the end of the season. There's
I've got a question.
Yeah.
Would you rather have Travis Etienne in Jacksonville, or let me see, Kieran Williams in LA?
Fantasy wise or just regular football?
Fantasy wise.
That's tough, Dylan, because those are both guys that I'm a little iffy on just where exactly they should be falling. The tough thing about running backs in fantasy, I mean, it's the same thing with running backs every year, but it seems to be the hardest position to predict. I mean, guys like Monroe St. What's up?
That's why everybody loves zero running back.
Yeah, exactly. I think if it's me, I would probably lean Kieran Williams just based on I think the Rams offense as a whole will be more productive than the Jaguars. Not to say that the Jags won't be productive. I just, I look at Jared Goff, I look at Puka Nacua, I look at Cooper Kupp. There's going to be points scored in LA. And I think, with the creativity of Sean McVay, there's just going to be a little bit more opportunity, for Kieran Williams to kind of have some of those bigger moments. It's close, but I do think I would lean Kieran Williams.
What if it's full point PPR?
Yeah.
You worry about Blake Corum there?
I mean, Blake Corum's definitely, I think I don't worry about Blake Corum as much, much more than I do about Tank Bigsby, to be honest with you. I think the number one running back position is solidified. The only way those guys would cut into these the reps from the ones is if either there's an injury or we're just not seeing productivity, which settles the argument one way or another. I mean, looking at Kieran Williams, I'm looking at last season his reception stats. I know Etienne was fine as a receiving back. I mean, a lot of 4-catch games for 20, 30 receiving yards, 40 receiving yards. I mean, Kieran Williams had a 10-catch game for 48 yards, 7 catches, 6.5, 4.7, but is a 0, a 2, a 4. So
and Sean McVay doesn't really like throwing at running backs.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really think it changes much for me. I don't think either of them are elite pass-catching backs, and I don't think either of them are slouches when it comes to pass-catching it from the running back position. So I think I pretty much would hold my same answer there.
I think Etienne's more of a pass-catching back. I saw him make some big receiving plays at Clemson. I think he's got more speed. Kieran Williams may be one of the slowest running backs in the NFL, but that doesn't mean ineffective. Emmitt Smith wasn't the fastest running back, and yet he's got the most rushing yards ever.
Yeah.
He played in Dallas over Detroit, but that's a story for another day.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a close call. I see why you picked it too. I mean, Travis Etienne had 1 receiving touchdown last year, and Kieran Williams had 3. So I mean, it's tough. It's a pretty even comparison, and I don't really think you could go too wrong either way. But I'm sure at the end of the day, this isn't fantasy football. You ain't going to be making trades like that anyway. And I think if I could speak for Jaguars fans, you're just I think you'd be just fine with Travis Etienne coming into the season as your RB1. There's a lot worse you can do.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, you could have Zamir White or Alexander Madison in Las Vegas, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think either one of those guys would be the RB1 in New England, Detroit, Pittsburgh.
Detroit over Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery.
Not Detroit. I'm sorry. I was looking at Detroit when I meant to say Washington actually, because I think he's better than Brian Thomas or Austin Eckler. But either way, like I said, I think both of those guys fall right around the same spot. I think they're.
So when did the Commanders get Brian Thomas from Jacksonville? Do you mean Brian Robinson?
I mean Brian Robinson. You get me tripping all over my words over here, Dylan. Sorry about that. I meant Brian Robinson.
So I mean, quickly, do you worry about the offensive line? Miami, a couple changes interior wise. Hunt's in Carolina. I think Connor Williams is in Seattle, right?
Yeah.
Seattle or Baltimore?
He just signed with Seattle about a week or two ago. I'm always worried about the Miami Dolphins offensive line. I've been worried about the Miami Dolphins offensive line for 25 years, but
Same here.
Yeah. I mean, the great thing about it is the way the offense is designed. Mike McDaniel, he's not blind to the fact that offensive line is a weakness. He's not blind to the fact that there are a couple positions that are a bit of a revolving door, and it's going to be the next man up just based on injury and guys not performing to where they should be. The great news is Tua's got a quick release. He's got lightning fast receivers, and the offense is built around getting the ball out of Tua's hands quickly. So, you talk about the run game. The Miami Dolphins had a very similar offensive line last season, and Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane were some of the most electric running backs in the NFL last year. So, do I have concerns about the offensive line? We didn't really do much to fix it. Teron Armstead, is only going to play 12 games probably this season. And, there's definitely a couple holes that we had from last season, but the nice thing about it is, we don't need Tua to sit in the pocket for 6 seconds to make plays happen. Fortunately, Mike McDaniel's smart enough to know that, there are going to be plays where it's going to break down, and he's going to have an outlet guy. He's going to have a safety option. And, Mike McDaniel knows just as well as anyone how capable that offensive line is. And if there's any team in the NFL to combat a bad offensive line with some quick plays, it's going to be the Miami Dolphins.
It's weird. Thinking back to last year, both of our teams started out hot. I mean, your Dolphins were 11-4. I don't know what your record was before that Monday night game against Tennessee. The freaking Titans really hurt both of our teams last year. But I mean, looked like Miami could win the AFC East and not get a 1 seed, and we know how the season ended. Yeah. And my Jags were 8-3, looking like we could be the 1 seed, and then we pooped our pants coming home.
Yeah.
Losing 5 out of 6.
Right.
So how can Miami go from being a team winning in September and October to winning when it matters? Because because guess what? Especially in your division, you want to play Buffalo, New York, Cleveland, Green Bay later in the year.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a pretty daunting end of the season stretch. Big thing is staying healthy. I mean, obviously that's going to be the key to any team this season. But the big thing is the team knows that. They're not blind to the social media comments about the Dolphins not being able to win in December, not being able to win in the cold, not being able to beat the big dogs, if you will. But they're preparing for that. I mean, it is a pretty daunting back end of the run, but as I said in our AFC East preview, I wouldn't be surprised if the Dolphins started this season 7-0. I think there's 7 winnable games to start off that football season, and you can only play the schedule that's presented to you. You're not going to be able to make any trades on the schedule and have that December Cleveland game in September. It's not going to happen. So, The only thing that the Miami Dolphins and Mike McDaniel can do is win the football games that they're supposed to. You're not going to be blowing 14-point games with 30 minutes left in the fourth quarter like you did against Tennessee last year. And you got to beat the big dogs. It's not keeping your composure, not having any trap games against teams that you're supposed to beat, and being competitive in the games that matter is what it's going to be about. The easiest way for the Miami Dolphins to win a playoff game and to make a serious push this year is to have home field advantage going into the playoffs. And the only way to do that is to finish as one of the top seeds in the AFC. I think they've got the talent to do it. And, I really think that that's the key to the Dolphins having any sort of success this year. I mean, whether they can win in cold weather or not, at the end of the day, it's not about the Dolphins losing in cold weather. It's about having home field advantage. The Dolphins want to play in Miami in January, not because it's going to be 70 degrees. I mean, yes, that's a contributing factor, but you want to play games that matter in your home stands with your home fans. I mean, it's something that, it doesn't matter if it's a Dolphins Jaguars game, where both teams play in Florida and the weather's not going to be a factor. Having that home field advantage, not having to sleep at a hotel the night before the game, not having to get on a plane, being able to sleep in your own bed leading up to kickoff. All of those come into a play. It's not all about the weather. It's not all about the big dogs. It's about, being comfortable and having as much advantage as possible when it comes to the games that matter. The Dolphins know that, and the biggest key is going to be setting themselves up, winning the football games that they're supposed to early on in that season, and ideally stealing one in Cleveland or taking one from Buffalo or beating the Texans in Houston in December. Those are all things that have the possibility to happen. It's just keeping your head down, focusing and doing your job.
I think in a way the Jags did get a few scheduling breaks. We play Buffalo in week 3. We play the Bears in London. We don't play because, you all went to Soldier Field and won a couple of years ago, but the Bears are as the late Dennis Green would say, the Bears are who we thought they were.
Yeah.
And then, of course, then we play Philly week 9 as a Sunday night game. But, Jags cold weather game could be Tennessee late in the year, and Tennessee's not the worst game you could have. It definitely beats a -30 -58 billion below zero that the Dolphins played in last year.
Yeah. And, if the Dolphins finish off that game against Buffalo or finish off that game against Tennessee, that -50 game against Kansas City never happened. So, and that's really exactly where my point was going to is you never know which game is going to define your season. And you got to treat those week 1, week 3, week 5 games just as important as those week 17, week 16, week 15 games because, that's the beauty of the NFL season. This isn't baseball. You're not playing 182 games where you can lose 10 in a row and still win the World Series. In the NFL, every game matters. Every game counts. And you've got to treat every game like it could be the reason why you go to the Super Bowl or not. And I think the mentality and the culture in that Miami Dolphins locker room, thanks to Mike McDaniel and thanks to their team leaders, it's something that these Dolphins fans, they know that, or these Dolphins players, they know that this is their window. And, they don't want to let down the fans. They don't want to let down their teammates. They don't want to let down the city. And they have to do what it takes to make sure that they're in the best situation to succeed, come playoff time.
Yeah, it's just going to be freaky how the schedule is. Do you think the Dolphins, seemingly the Dolphins have a break every year playing a cold weather team week 1, week 2 early in the year? Denver, Buffalo, week 3, yeah. But is that advantage muted for the fact that the Jags also train in Florida? Quickly.
Yeah, obviously you're not going to have the advantage of the Seattle Seahawks or Bills where they're not used to playing and practicing in Florida. The big thing I'd say for week 1 is everyone complains about it, especially Bills fans, but that opposing sideline, man, it's the Miami Dolphins built their stadium to where the opposing sideline is in the sun and the home sideline's in the shade. I don't care if you're from Florida or not. It is a significant advantage having the shade in September in Miami. So whether they're used to practicing in 90, 100 degrees, it's going to feel a lot harder on that Jaguars sideline, on September 8th than it will on that Dolphins sideline. So yes, it might not be quite the advantage of some of those northern teams, but the Jaguars are still going to feel the heat down there in Miami.
And I'm guessing Miami's going to wear white that day.
Oh, they definitely are. They always do at home.
That's what Don Shula, especially September and October.
Like I said, man, home field advantage. It's more than it's more than the crowd. There's so many elements that come into it, and I think it's a bigger factor than people think. But obviously we both are excited about this game. Every time the Dolphins and the Jaguars get to play each other, there's always a little bit of extra fuel in the fire just because of these podcasts and our friendship here. But what would be a Dolphins Jaguars game without making things a little bit more interesting, Dylan? So I think we have to tell the people about a certain wager that we've got on the table, for this Week 1 matchup.
Yeah. If you think back a few years ago, we had a friendly wager for the Dolphins Jags game in London, and I think Alex still owes me a few things from that game.
I did buy the Jacksonville Jaguars Gatorade towel, so I do have that in my possession. Unfortunately, there's one that looks quite similar to that. I don't think I actually got my physical exercise in from that part of the wager, but it's all right. We'll make up for it this time.
Yeah. So are we going to do it based on? So what team are we going to do it first on who wins?
You go ahead, Dylan. What if the Jacksonville? Just because I know it's not going to happen, we can get it out of the way. But if the Jacksonville Jaguars beat the Miami Dolphins Week 1, Dylan, what is my punishment? Tell the people.
You're going to have to do a 30-minute run or 30-minute cycling class.
All right.
Trying to think. You will have to get some long hair. Like you will have to make your hair like Fabio. The Fabio character.
Yeah.
And I was thinking. Any good there's one Kenny Rogers song I remember, especially if you're a baseball fan, called "I Am the Greatest."
Yeah.
It's the baseball song. Well, we're not going to just straight up copyright it, but you're gonna have to sing "Trevor Lawrence is the greatest."
Oh boy! All right, I think it's a fair side of your bet. I definitely, if we lose this game, I definitely owe you that physical activity because I don't think I gave it to you after the 2021 game, but. I'm very confident in my team this year. And as far as on my side of the wager, I've got a couple things in mind for you, Dylan. First off, I bought that Jacksonville Jaguars Gatorade towel. And I would love for you to have a little bit more aqua and orange in your home. So I think first things first, if the Dolphins win that game, I'm going to have you get a Miami Dolphins Gatorade towel just so you can get a little bit more orange instead of the gold there in your wardrobe. That way we can have matching towels just in case. And then in addition to that, you're going to have me sing a song. I'm going to do the same thing to you. I would love, Dylan, to see you on our next podcast singing the Miami Dolphins fight song. I'm going to give you the floor for when the time comes, but it starts a little something like, Miami has the Dolphins, the greatest football team. I can't wait, Dylan. It's going to be awesome.
And then what else?
The Gatorade towel, the fight song. Really, that's about all I got for you. That fight song is really the big thing I'm looking forward to. Getting the Gatorade towel. I wouldn't make you. I mean, I could add in some activity, but I don't know if that's as much of a punishment for you. I think you enjoy working out a little bit more than I do.
Yep.
But you can do some running on top of it if you want, but I won't hold you to it.
maybe when it cools down a little because it's only 100. It's only 95 billion degrees outside.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, so that means losers gotta start practicing in the shower.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be a karaoke session that you're not going to want to miss. That's to say the least.
Yeah, The only problem is it won't be a Whitney Houston singing.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Okay, Alex. Thanks for hopping on. Maybe the Dolphins could flip over the Jags week 1 and actually make me sing.
Yeah, we'll see. It's going to be a good matchup one way or another. I can't wait for it. It's NFL kickoff, man. We are just around the corner. We have wrapped up preseason. I know fantasy football drafts are in full swing and really starting to crank it up now that there's no more risk of preseason injuries. And, I can't wait to I wouldn't want to get the NFL season kicked off against another team than your Jacksonville Jaguars. I can't wait for it, Dylan. Fins up, baby.